Hey everybody, it's the Last RoboKai here, and it's time for more Let's Play Dawn of War Dark Crusade. And we're between strongholds once again, so we're off to murder. I think we're actually off to murder the Eldar this time. Fun and games and stripping the flesh from the bone of our oldest enemy, because we are the Necrons, and we do thoroughly dislike the pointy-eared fellows more than most. And joining me along for this adventure is, of course, Coolguy.
I love that you phrase it as between strongholds, like it's just like we just broke up with our last girlfriend or something.
Well, we did drive the Tau off the planet. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about the Tau, but we are going to be doing like a massive Tau mission later, and we might be doing a few other Tau-related areas later as well. So we can focus on those then, sort of waving my hand. Because there are some interesting things to talk about in regards to the Eldar and the Necrons. Particularly that thing we all like to call the War in Heaven. So I think that'll be the topic for today. So let's get stuck straight in. So we're going to start out post-Tau Stronghold with the entirety of my my secret retinue absolutely obliterated. And I'm going to be thinking a little bit about which one I want to go for first, because we can take the industrial production stuff, or we can take Bulwark, and they're both got, different sort of bonuses to, troop amounts, or like how much requisition you earn per turn. So our major issue now becomes, why would I go swinging towards the Eldar at this point? And unfortunately, we're about to learn a very, very harsh lesson that I felt was also very important to show off, and that is that you don't go into a lot of fights against like well-entrenched opponents without most of your retinue to start.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this like I'm a little blind on this. I'm just seeing frickin', Garrison 6, and I'm just like, well, that's not too bad. On the only thing that comes to mind is if there's two opponents, that could get bad really quickly.
Yeah, I just straight up do not have the requisition to do it. The smart thing probably would have been to just go to that Tau position and attack it.
Oh, there it is. Enemy has two bases. There's the buried lead.
Yeah, so this is going to go really badly for me. But that's okay, because sometimes
right.
it's very important to show what happens when things go badly for you. And it's going to go particularly badly for me, actually, in no small part thanks to the fact that we're up against the Eldar, and they have, aside from some balancing things that got done on them, which personally, for a lot of other people's opinions, only made them stronger. We also have to deal with the fact that the Eldar's new unit for Dark Crusade is a new commander-style unit, like a secondary commander unit. Because obviously, when the Space Marines came out, Chaos Marines came out, they'd have their Force Commander-style character and their casting-style character. The Greenskins also had the War Boss and the big mech and things like that. So of the four starters, the Eldar just had the Farseer. They didn't have anybody else, and this sort of
kind of had the Warlocks.
They kind of had the Warlocks, but the Warlocks were always like additives to the, that was like the Seer Council. Like it wasn't. I don't think it's quite the same thing, and so
it really isn't.
We get to unfortunately deal with this new character, and it is the Harlequin.
I still have PTSD twitches about this chick, like 15 years later.
Yeah, so
good lord.
We'll talk a little bit about what Harlequins are before we get one to turn up and show us why they're so difficult to deal with in Dark Crusade. We've talked in part about the Eldar, / Eldari, and how there are essentially at the moment in the lore 5 major factions. There is the Craftworld Eldari. There is the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, who we'll talk about when Soulstorm comes out, since they are a playable faction. There are the Exodites, who are the Eldar who basically rejected Eldar society long ago, and just went off to be, went to be Eldar riding dinosaurs on like Maiden World and stuff like that. And then
they returned to monkey.
Yeah, and the relatively newer faction called the Inari. But there is a 5th faction, and they're kind of interesting in the fact that out of all the factions, they're the one that just gets to really freely move amongst all these different factions. The Inari is made up of a combination of different factions, but at the same time there are those amongst the Craft Worlds, amongst the Drukhari, and probably amongst the Exodites that do not trust them. Harlequins basically get a free pass wherever they want to go, and there's a very good reason for that. And it goes into the the nature of what they do, and they fulfill actually quite a few roles in Eldar society. Not least of all that they are the holders of perhaps most of the history, most of the oldest tales of the Eldar. A lot got lost in the fall of the Eldar, and somewhat interestingly enough, what kept things together in terms of that knowledge was the Harlequins. The Harlequins have access to the Black Library, and I mentioned the Black Library as the publishing house for Games Workshop stories and things like that, and there's a very good reason why they chose that, is because, yeah, it's this giant nebulous space hidden in the webway, which contains quite possibly the largest repository of information in regards to how to fight chaos. And the reason for this is that there's only really like one god who got away with it, one Eldar god that got away with it at the end of Slaanesh's birth. We know when Slaanesh was born, pretty much every single god that the Eldar had was devoured by Slaanesh, and Cain survived in some lore statements because Khorne got really mad that this was happening, and intervened, and as a result, Cain was not consumed, but instead shattered into shards and, landed amongst the different craft worlds. Then there is, and then of course there is the craft worlds that believe that Isha was taken away from Slaanesh by Nurgle, and that she sort of, kept by Nurgle, and she sort of whispers to the mortals of the Warhammer 40,000 universe the cures to the diseases. But again, that's like a thing that a particular craft world believes. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's real or true. And so the only actual Eldar god to get away with it, so to speak, was the Laughing God, which I believe his name is pronounced Segarash. And his entire thing was he was like a trickster god. And so the way he more or less survived was by hiding in Cain's shadow until Khorne got involved and Cain shattered away, and so, Segarash basically escaped into the webway, which of course is something that the Drukhari also did. And as a result of this, he was not consumed. It's not as though he plays a very... Oh, and here we go. And this is the Harlequin, and this is why the Harlequin is a problem. I believe you have a good understanding of the mechanics of how this knockdown jump that happens passively works.
Oh, God. Yeah, so basically there are commander characters and special melee classes and so on and so forth. They have specific moves that they pick out of their repertoire, right? And let's take the Grey Knights that the Space Marines have as an example here. They have a charge attack that will that knocks back, disrupts, etc. But they have to use it at range. After they're in combat with a specific unit, they won't use it anymore. But melee specialists also tend to have a melee knockback, and Grey Knights again have a psychic blast that they use. They have that, and it goes on cooldown, right? It's something like they get to use it once every 20 seconds or something of that nature. And that's generally how commanders and melee specialists work. They might have a charge, but in general they have one melee knockback attack that they will use every 15-20 seconds. Harlequins have 6 melee knockbacks. 6!
Just watch them bounce around from person to person. It's kind of murderous.
And then they finally go on cooldown. And then at which point, they will be able to, they will, regenerate that stuff, and they will continue to use their leaps, but it's like charges. So like if you have a Harlequin in there, as you saw, like for the first 30 seconds that they are engaged, they are doing nothing but messing up your melee lines and taking huge swaths of your forces out of the fight. Like they can't do anything. They're on their asses, and everybody who might not have played this game at this point might be thinking, oh, but surely there's some sort of counter to this, some sort of thing where you can't be knocked down. Hell no. Hell to the no. The quote-unquote balancing thing is that you can't be targeted or damaged while you're knocked down. Guess what? That doesn't fucking matter because while the Harlequin is knocking you down, everybody else is moving around you, surrounding you, and taking the tactical initiative away from you. So, in summation, fuck Harlequins, I still have nightmares.
Yeah. So you can sort of see, I never managed to strike out very well, and as a result of this, I have ended up very camped inside of my own base. You know, the Harlequin certainly didn't help, but it was just simply the fact that if you try to start out from a neutral position and take on a 2-stack of enemy forces, it's gonna end badly. And it's typically gonna... Yeah, you know what? Someone who's probably a lot more skilled at this game than me could do it. But it was pretty obvious my Necron warriors were being outplayed, for the most part, by the sheer numbers that were against it. I was getting hit from a lot of different angles, simply by nature of the enemy sending waves of enemies at me. And they weren't all coming at once either, they were sort of alternating, and as a result, it's pretty much just like, they're down my throat, so I'm like, well, okay, let's forfeit the battle. You know, we lost, we didn't get a stage, but that's okay. Like, that was my second action of the turn, and that's also why I didn't have any money after taking it.
So your turn is effectively over.
Yeah.
Next turn, you will be able to attack again and avenge yourself. When you are ready to let the enemy factions act, click on the end turn button.
It might have even been more clever just to end turn after I took the Tau Stronghold, because the turn has to actually end for all the requisition for the territory you've gained to kick in. So, I was still like, you know, as you can see, I've now got 1,000. So suddenly, it's like, all of these things that I needed before, look at this. Boom, boom, boom. I now actually stand a chance. And I'm going back in.
Let's try that again.
Yeah, let's do this now with actual forces that I can utilize.
Yeah, like when the game says the enemy has 2 bases, that means one of those bases absolutely must die in the first like 5 minutes of the match, or you're done.
But now I actually have an army that can fight back against like those first few waves and things like that, so it's good.
Right.
So we should do a lot better. And now we can sort of finish up talking about Second Rush. He doesn't really appear at all much. Like he's pretty much keeping it on the down low. Like nobody can actually like sort of find him, which is probably for the best. He may even reside inside the Black Library. No one's ever really been able to get inside of it, aside from the Harlequins and maybe like a small handful of like entities that were allowed in there. I believe like one Inquisitor has been allowed in to see a little bit of it, and he said he remarks that it has an extremely powerful Guardian there. I know Ahriman of the Thousand Suns had made it his basically his lifelong ambition to get in there, so that he might undo the curse of the rubric of Ahriman that was cast on the Thousand Suns. Although that may have changed now that he's discovered that the Inyard and the Inari possess the capabilities of actually doing it themselves. He might be changing angles on that, but we'll see. But the interest...
Yeah, that's a hard we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But it's still kind of interesting in its own way because, you know, he's basically the last Eldar god, and he is still fighting the good fight. So where the Hulk would sit generally in terms of Eldar society is they travel to the various Eldar places all around, and when they're there, they will typically do some sort of performance while they're there. So they're like a traveling troupe of performers in a way, and the things that sort of denote Harlequins is that they will all typically wear a mask relating to the role they play in the sort of dramas of Eldar history and things like that, and certain higher members of them will have masks that can sort of change different shapes. I believe it's I can't remember the exact rank, but I can very much pull it up very quickly because they have like a Psyker amongst their rank. Let's take a quick look here. Oh, no, the troops are basically called masks, which is kind of interesting because you know,
because of the Slaneshi Daemonette.
Yeah, the Slaneshi Daemonette, who also has that aspect to her as well. And her name is The Mask.
Right. That's an entire conversation as well.
Yeah. So the I believe it's the Shadow Seers are the psychics of them, and they typically will play the role of Slanesh in like, you know, recreations of the fall of the Eldar and stuff. It's in a way they go around reminding the Eldar of what they used to be, and what they could be again. And so, like, one of the interesting things is I believe the Shadow...
not to have more.
I believe the thing about the Shadows here is that they also don't wear a Spirit Stone as part of, like, because of the role they play, they are destined upon death to be swallowed by Slanesh, which is kind of interesting. So, but they have things like Death Jesters, who basically are like the heavy weapons members of the team, and and the thing that sort of defines them, aside from their masks, is they also wear hollow fields, which makes it so that they can take on these roles a lot easier by sort of altering their appearance in the midst of their performances. And in battle, this also serves to distort how they appear, and it can make it much more difficult to target them. And so that's why when the Harlequins actually go to war, everybody is really glad to have them, because they're actually really fucking scary to fight, because they don't just go around as, like, you know, the masks doing performance. They're usually also there on ulterior, like, you know, ideas, and it might be, you know, sort of, you know, shoring up support for what they're doing, or they may actually be there to specifically deal with problems involving chaos. So they're very, very capable in combat. They're ridiculously capable in combat. They've been around since, like, pretty much the start of, like, the Eldar, Craftworld Eldar as a concept. They were in, like, the 2nd edition rulebook, and they were notable then because they actually have this one particular weapon called the Harlequin's Kiss, which is always kind of funny to talk about. The Harlequin's Kiss is kind of like having, like, a wrist-mounted punch dagger. So they would basically punch it into somebody. And we talked about the Warp Spiders, how the Warp Spiders have guns that fire monofilament wires, like monofilament web. It's basically, you're basically shooting, like, like a silly string, but it's like got razor edged on it. So basically, you hit someone with silly string, they get disemboweled, they get dismembered, like they turn into mush. Right. Imagine that, but the Harlequin's Kiss directly injects it into your body, and then they rip it out. It's very unpleasant.
This is basically like if because the entire monomolecular thing is rehashed in a lot of stuff, but something that might be most recognizable to some of our viewers is the monomolecular blades are one of the primary ways that in Metal Gear Rising, Raiden and a lot of his antagonists are explained as being able to do unholy things with swords. So, you know, just imagine one of those things, like Jetstream Sam's for a freaking sword or whatever, being injected directly into your guts and then ripped out. There you go.
Yeah,
like
the Harlequin's Kiss is not a gentle weapon. As much as the Harlequins dancing around are look at them go. They're such a pain, and they're in and out, and they're across. They can be very difficult and frustrating to deal with. But at the same time, you know, I kind of like Harlequins. Like, even though they're such a pain in the ass.
As a unit, they still give me nightmares. As like a concept and everything, having the traveling storytellers and the traveling drama troops. I've always felt was one of the more brilliant things that they've done with the Eldar as a faction and as a race, simply because it's really easy to get caught up in the Eldar's own posturing and the Eldar's own bullcrap. It's just like, well, we're so superior and we know everything. It's like, okay, you know, like. When you get told that so often in fiction, you like you as a enjoyer of the fiction are at risk of thinking, oh, this is actually how it is, and this is actually how they're postured in the universe, and it's just not the case. Like with Eldar, yes, they posture, and yes, they truly think they're superior, but if they actually lived up to their own hype they wouldn't need storytellers. They just remember.
Yeah, that's and I believe that's it's sort of just a very good reminder of what they were, what they've lost, and the fact that the Harkonnens, and the Harkonnens are, like I said, like, they're allowed to pretty much come and go as they please. There's a strong suggestion that that events that are proceeding with the Ynnari and things like that are actually going very much to the Laughing God's plans, and that, like, this is exactly the kind of thing he wanted to happen. It was in effect, because a lot of what he's doing is pushing towards the Rana Dandra, which is the death of the entire Eldar race, but also the death of Slaanesh, and with it, obviously, with Inyad, would be also the rebirth of the entirety of the Eldar, because through it the god would breathe their life back into it. So it's like, basically not merely destroying Slaanesh, but protecting everyone. So we've managed to defeat one of them, one of the stacks of the Eldar. So now we gotta get to the next one, and we also gotta get back and, like, save my base, because I'm about to get Eldar very badly.
Right. Yeah, but, like, the only risk now is that you get punched in the gut while you're trying to reposition all of your incredibly slow-moving forces. But, like, if you can get back to your base and reestablish fighting lines, like, this is the beginning of the end. Like, if you can knock out that first base, then it's a more one-on-one fight. And like if you had the oomph to take care of the first base, probably got it for the second one.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna sort of slide us from that into conversation about the Necrons versus the Eldari and how it plays into the Eldar pantheon themselves, because there was a time when the Eldar gods themselves actually took part in the war in heaven. It's kind of a weird thing to talk about, because the timeline kind of goes a little bit all over the place, and the best way to describe it is that yes, Cain was apparently active during Kala Mensha Cain, as we know, the bloody-handed god that is the avatar that we all see, was active during the Catan and the Necron tier, fighting against the Old Ones and all the creatures they created. And they say this because in the story, Cain fights against the Nightbringer, and in cleaving off attacking the Nightbringer, like, parts of the necrodermis that the Nightbringer possessed was shattered, and the resulting metal shards sort of stuck into Cain, which pierced his flesh and sort of tainted him, and began Cain sort of falling into madness, because Cain would go on to commit a variety of atrocities against the Eldar themselves, including and, like, this is where the timeline gets kind of weird, because the entire idea is that, it's sort of kind of confusing to say, because they never really commit to saying it or not, whether or not the Old Ones and the Eldari gods are exactly the same being or not, right? Like, a lot of the Eldar mythology is so screwed up as a result of the fall of the Empire. It's probably impossible for them to know, and as such, it's written as such. Like the War in Heaven is written as this sort of, apocryphal, like, weird thing that happened, but they can't really explain too much about, because, like, it's told mostly through, like, dance and drama by the Harlequins these days. But the story is that the Old Ones created the Eldar, and basically had to go off and start doing other stuff. And so, as a result of this, one particular hero rose up amongst the Eldari, the Eldar. I'm going to interpose those quite a lot. And his name was...
They're the same for
Yeah. And so, he became, like, this fellow named Eldanesh became basically the rallying hero of them while they were fending for themselves. And, basically fought a bunch of really weird creatures and then Eldanesh allied with Ulthanesh, because you'll often hear the Eldar units in this in like Dawn of War often reference Eldanesh, Ulthanesh, and the different heroes of the Eldar as well, and they were able to defeat that. And then apparently a bunch of like living nightmares attacked, and they couldn't defeat them. But Kalamancha Kane turned up, and he came with them. And then, for whatever reason, it kind of like Eldanesh and Ulthanesh sort of fell apart from each other, and like, you know, I think Eldanesh kicked Ulthanesh out, and apparently, like, for whatever reason, Kane didn't like the idea that Ulthanesh was like starting to drift away from the whole war thing, because I think Eldanesh and Ulthanesh might have also started to become exarchs at that point, losing themselves in combat. So there's an idea of how difficult it is to come to grips with the Harlequin. Like, even all focus firing, it was disrupting a fair amount. And so he sent a scorpion formed from one of his own fingers to sting Ulthanesh. Because if Ulthanesh died in exile, the Eldari would start fighting each other, but Ulthanesh survived. He returned to his people, founding a different house, and the age of division between the Eldari started, which was great, because Kane really liked division and war and strife and that sort of thing. And so he then went to Eldanesh and was like, "Hey, dude, I'll give you all of my power and everything to crush everybody." But Eldanesh was like, "Yeah, nah, dude, I'm not going to do that." And then in response, Kane killed Eldanesh, and this resulted in basically Asuryan being like, "Okay, that's it, that's enough. You are no longer allowed to have any contact whatsoever with these children. You've just actively interfered. Like, you were allowed to sort of, like, tangentially interfere, but you quite literally just killed one, and one of the best of them." So Asuryan was like, this is it. Completely not allowed anymore. And so he did this apparently with one of the divine swords forged by the Smith god Vol, which will play into things later as well. So what ended up happening is apparently there's like different versions of this story. Because the timeline of these events get really fucking weird, because there are some that say Eldanesh challenged Kane to free Vol, because at the time Vol was basically the prisoner of Eldanesh. I mean, of Kane, but because it goes all over the place. But the funny thing was, that his death ended the war in heaven, because like the timeline, and this might be the closer to the current timeline, because the way it goes is Asuryan forbid contact with the Eldar, and what ended up happening was that the two of the Eldar gods, Isha and Kurnos, the goddess of life, fertility, nature, etc., and the god of like the hunt and things like that, husband and wife, kept in contact with the Eldari via a magic mirror that I think was given to them by Vol, or perhaps they just always had it or whatever. It was probably just high technology. Kane found out about this and went to Asuryan and was like, "Hey, these suckers broke the rules." And Asuryan was like, "They did, you are free to do with them as you wish." So he took them, he enslaved them, he was a total jackass to them, and Vol was like, "You need to stop doing this shit, dude. So how about, look, we'll cut a deal. I'll make you 100 swords. I will make you 100 swords, and in return, you will leave these people alone. Like, you will let them free, you will leave them alone." And Kane was like, "Okay, but you have to do it in this time frame." And so he did it. Almost. He got to 99 swords and was like, "Oh shit, I'm not going to make it." So, like, they talk about Eldanesh being struck down by one of Vol's divine swords. But if he had one of Vol's divine swords, then that means that the deal was already done, and it's kind of weird, so, like, the timing of it's really fucking weird. And so, as a result of that, Kane was, like, Vol basically snuck in a mundane sword from his, that he'd made that wasn't a divine sword, in amongst them. And the idea is that when Cain went and fought the Nightbringer, he was using the non-divine sword, and that's how it was even possible for him to get wounded. And as a result of this, Cain was very, very angry and sought out Vol. Vol finished forging that divine sword, but was not able to build it properly because he was just a smith god, and as a result, he was crippled and chained and imprisoned by Cain. So, in that sort of idea, the idea then is that Eldanesh went to free him and was struck down. It would also make more sense in terms of direct interference if Cain was actually actively taking part in the fight against the Nightbringers. So it's kind of weird. Like, I think the initial version we were talking about there might have been the initial lore stuff, and the second one might have been what's sort of been altered with the coming of the Necrons. And they've just, rather than like have one contradict the other, they've basically just gone, well, you know, this is what happens when your entire civilization gets super collapsed. So the Bulwark gives us like more production facilities for reducing the cost of garrisons, and it gives you more money back when you withdraw garrisons and things like that. So that's kind of handy. Sorry, you continue your thought now.
No. Like, what I was simply going to make the point that I'll wait for this to get done talking.
Bulwark makes it cheaper for you to reinforce your provinces. This cost savings is applied automatically.
Yay! All right. But yeah. So words hard. Now I've lost my train of thought. Thanks, game. But yeah, the tough thing about this is that it does go straight to the point of part of this is intended. Part of this is intended by the writers of all of the Warhammer 40K backstory, because again, a lot of this justifies the point of having storytellers of the Eldar in the first place. You know, like it's a rough situation for them. They don't exactly know what's going on. Nobody else does either, and it really emphasizes how confusing, you know, being an elder race is. And they the writers of Warhammer 40K do this frequently when the confusion is indeed the point. And in that way, you can also look at some of the origins of the Emperor, right? Like there's the origins of the Emperor of Man is just like, why is the Emperor such a huge character, and why is he such a jackass and such a terrible father to the Primarchs when he's supposed to be, you know, this divine and ancient being. And you know, some of the legends around the Emperor is that the Emperor tried doing bringing humanity to their potential in a more gentle way by literally being Buddha and Muhammad and Jesus Christ and all of these other religious figures, and it didn't work the way he wanted to. So he was just like, okay, now I'm stepping up my jackboot game.
And then and even then it took a very, very long time to see it to fruition. It's an interesting concept. I also wanted to say, like, the killing of Eldanesh is why the Avatar of Cain always has a bloody hand. I think I've made the comment about it being about also representative of the death of the person, the young king who sacrifices himself to bring him about. It's probably a mix of both, but like apparently Cain himself was cursed by Asturion for slaying Eldanesh to have the bloody hand. And so it would make sense if the Eldar gods were like the old ones, some of the old ones who sort of survived the end of the War of Heaven, that they secluded themselves away afterwards, refusing to, you know, basically being banned from making contact with the Eldar. I mean, with the Eldar in any sort of way, which resulted in them not being aware that their people had fallen to decadence, etc., and then oops, all chaos, all Slaanesh, all getting eaten, and that's where And that's where Kain was unable to properly defend himself against Slaanesh because of the wound that he had incurred against him from fighting the Nightbringer. So it does kind of come round on that, I guess, in an interesting way.
It's one of the things that I feel is really well done about Warhammer 40k universe as a whole, in that there are certain things that you can't know, and that's the point. But that is done sparingly enough, and with exactly the correct things. There's 101 fandoms and mythos out there that do the whole "you can't know this" thing, but they do it with things that are so critical to being able to grok what's going on that you just don't care. A lot of the later Lovecraftian mythos, like when Arkham House was founded, some of the later Eldar gods, like they do this left, right, and center. And it's just like okay, well you can't know so much about Azathoth, the blind idiot god, and all creation is his dream, and if he ever wakes up, will immediately be unmade. It's like, okay, I suppose we can work with that. We can talk about that, but you can't know anything about it, and there's no solution, so there's nothing to talk about. And whereas with a lot of the unknowables in Warhammer 40k, be it with like a lot of the things with the War in Heaven, it's tantalizing to figure out something like that and to come up with your own interpretation of how a lot of this stuff works, simply because it creates so many different implications with how the current mythos and Dawn of War itself looks like if the old ones that tormented or uplifted the Necrons, depending on how you look at it, are exactly the same as the Eldar gods, then Dawn of Dark Crusade has so many different ways of presenting itself, and there's so many different ways of interpreting what the characters say to one another, and that can be fun to toy with. But but it doesn't necessarily matter. Right, it's not something that you absolutely have to know to make sense of what's happening in front of you. At the end of the day, what matters is the Necrons are really angry robots that don't like life, and the Eldar are elves who have screwed up a lot in their time, and they're trying in their own inscrutable and frequently self-destructive way to stop screwing up. That's what really matters at the end of the day. All of this other stuff is just context, but it's such delightfully tantalizing.
Yeah, it gets even more confusing because the War in Heaven as a concept could also refer specifically to when Kain and Vol started dusting up with one another. Different gods sided with Kain, different gods sided with Vol, and started battling and sucking the mortals in on each other on that as well. So it's kind of it gets really confusing. I will correct myself. Apparently, the foundation of the Spirit Stones stems from that story. It wasn't a mirror. It might be a mirror in one other codex I've read or something, and they've since retconned it. Because a lot of my memory of that sort of stuff comes from reading the second edition Eldar Codex. But it's kind of funny because just checking it real now, they basically Ish's tears were forged by Vol into Spirit Stones, with some being given to the gods and some being given to the to the Eldari so that they could communicate, and that's how that sort of kicked off. So yeah, there's a lot of like there's just a lot of just a lot of different interpretations. A lot of it just like I think, and honestly, not like going outright saying, "Oh, this we've retconned that." As far as I'm aware, it was probably the best idea, because then it just sort of puts things in this really sort of weird situation where, it's like you can't know about it, but it's fine. Who cares? Like, it's a good story.
And they have retconned plenty.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is not something that Games Workshop is afraid of doing, as it were. Like they have retconned plenty. And okay, yeah, grognards get mad about retcon and blah blah blah, and then ultimately everybody gets over it, and they stop paying attention to people who are unpleasant. All right, like it happens.
Yeah, that's the best way to play it. Is like if you give in to the people who get like the angriest and stomp their feet the loudest about things, you're basically ensuring that you're going to be beholden to them, because you've just told them tantruming works.
Yeah, and it shouldn't. And by the way, if you are one of those people who get really mad about retcons,
I always find retcons really. I like the I think I've railed against the concept of like the Western concept of canon quite a bit. I've always preferred like the things you see from like Japanese stories and stuff, where basically they do a story and say, well, all the events here are canon to this, but that doesn't necessarily mean the events in like another thing are like, that doesn't mean like the events in this particular thing are like the root of it. If someone else wants to use some of this other aspect but not involve this, because like the Dragon Ball movies absolutely do people's heads in.
Oh, dude.
Like,
yeah,
where does Broly exist in this? And now there's actually like a Broly, another like Broly, who's like officially in the manga, and like, but also like has his own movie. So now there's like a second Broly has hit the Dragon Balls and like Fate universe, and everyone's just like, they're like, their brains are leaking out their ears, and it's like, y'all should have just like accepted, Of course it does, and then things like Garlic Jr. happen, and it's just like where he was in a movie, but then he was in like a filler episode. It's just like, just let it happen. Just let it happen. Don't think about it too much.
Don't worry about it. Seriously. It in the concept of, or in the position of, oh my god, why are all of the AIs so worthless? Never mind, don't answer.
Well, I mean, it works. Like I said, it works really well for the Let's Play. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's only gonna piss me off more. But anyway, the way Warhammer 40k handles it, like they're not afraid to just say, yeah, we retconned this, don't worry about it, it's fine. Which even goes into a joke that I made that made me look like a complete asshole, like the week I made it in this Let's Play. Yes. With regard to the squats.
He was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And like the day after we recorded it, it was like, here's the squats! And it was just like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have recorded that episode on March 31st, huh?
Yeah, I looked like a complete jackass, like before the ink was dry on that one. And you know what? I'm fine with it. Like, it was fun. Like I hope everybody's still laughing at me for that one. It was fantastic. Like who cares? So, and like that's like as long as something makes good stories, like that's what really matters at the end of the day. And there's 101 way. Even if there's only like 13 sci-fi plots or whatever the hell the number is by the Omega nerds of English storytelling, like there's 1,001 ways to tell each one. Okay, single large bit.
Yeah, this is gonna go pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is gonna go fine. Even if there's only 13 sci-fi stories, there's 1,001 ways to tell each one of those stories, and you can enjoy each one of those 1,001 ways. Also, what the hell was going on there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like
just fell over. I don't know if I just like
got
airdropped those guys in, but like,
whatever.
Yeah. So let's go find these guys and give them a good killing.
Yeah, you're gonna stomp all over them. Like they're basic. Like the standard AI tactics is like they know exactly where you are when the game when the map rolls, and they're just gonna come knocking straight at your door, because giving you any time to breathe and do anything is one of the stupidest things they can do.
Yeah,
and their attack vector is going to betray where their base is, and you're just gonna walk them back, and it's fine. Like that is how a standard game of Dawn of War tends to go, like in a multiplayer game and what have you. All right. So that means they're gonna be basically mid center, where one of the spawns are at in this particular map.
So, like, I like to think this episode has done a pretty good job of just sort of laying out a lot of you know, sort of you can't just face roll the campaign even when you're like got some momentum going. Like, this game still requires you to you know, to think about what you're doing on the battle map. I sort of live in hope. The third Company of Heroes game has been in beta for a while now. I did end up playing the alpha they put out. Sorry, it might still be an alpha. They put out an alpha of it, and Company of Heroes is Relic's next real-time strategy game, obviously.
Right.
And they're doing a battle map which is sort of like a return to Dark Crusades and like Soulstorm's battle map, only they're doing something really, really different with it. So it's taking place pretty much around Italy, like, you know, campaign basically around that sort of region in World War II. And they're doing a lot of stuff related to like how the battle map plays out. Obviously, it's not all set in stone. They'll tweak things as necessary, as they sort of, you know, as they go. So even what I know of it might get changed down the line. But the idea is that there's a lot of lashes skirmishes that you'll do for certain areas to take them, and if you properly apply your forces there, you can take regions to like gain artillery and stuff like that. For when you're having like more like major clashes with like enemy armies and stuff like that, that play out on the battle map. So the idea being, you know, catching certain regions might speed up your reinforcement or give you a global like a sort of like for adjacent regions artillery support that you can call on as like a cooldown action and things like that. So I'm kind of interested to see how that goes, because that to me sounds like that might be the Warhammer 40k Total War style game people wanted, because the big thing that always comes up is, oh man, I would really like it if Creative Assembly made a Warhammer 40k Total War game. And a lot of people go, well, can it work?
It's really and it's a lot more difficult to do right than the Total War thing.
Yeah, like, because in essence you're talking about, I think probably the best example I think would actually be Empire Total War. Because Empire Total War has a much larger emphasis on ranged like attacks and things like that. And as far as I'm aware, Empire didn't do that great. But even then, like, Empire is still a lot more about static gun lines and things like that than you would see in Warhammer 40k, which is, you know, rapid moving troops, like air support, titans, land speeders. Just, I'm rattling off all these things that just won't behold like a well-structured formational unit coming in. But if they did it like what it seems like Relic are trying to do with Company of Heroes 3, and if Company of Heroes 3 pulls it off, you might see that people might start saying, oh, I want to see it like that. And I think that might actually be, like, if they can pull it off, like the best way to go ahead with doing a campaign map of like a 40k scale.
the big problem that you run into with a lot of that sort of thing has always been that excuse me, has always been that the static gunline ethos that lent itself to Empire, and also lent itself to the first two Company of Heroes games, is that it ends up being horrifically boring to play because everything takes forever. That was my big problem with both Company of Heroes 1 and 2, is that you had the first couple of kind of cool commando missions where they introduced you to the basics of the game, and then every campaign mission after that took an hour and a half, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I was too old for this when I was in college, and I'm substantially older than that now.
Yeah, they'll need to have something to make these sorts of like battles play out in a lot faster pace, I think, to capture as well the faster pace of those sorts of like territory by territory conflicts. Like, we'll see how it goes. Like, because like we're probably still quite a while out from seeing Company of Heroes 3. All I know is when I saw it, I just kind of went, "Oh, that would actually be really, really good. That would be really good to have as like a 40K like thing." And yeah, we earned ourselves a little measure of more troops, and so that. Yeah, is that going to set us up for another fight? Are we gonna go take the Vandian coast now?
You still got 10 minutes left on the video, so okay, yeah, I was gonna say you're probably gonna go for industrial production.
It's funny, I said at the end of the thing, I think I went towards the orcs, but it turns out no.
Industrial center.
Holy crap! Was that 3 large bases? This better be a gimmick set. I literally actually don't
still
remember.
Operational, but other great underground refineries languished under the sands of the coast, long since abandoned as unnecessary by the planet's Tau masters. Whoever gained control of the coast would enjoy a powerful advantage for the rest of the Crusade.
Narrator, you missed like an entire middle paragraph.
Manufacturing facilities.
Yeah.
Field commanders could requisition more weapons than their foes.
So yeah, this is actually a very special kind of
thank God.
kind of conflict.
Yeah.
It's gonna be us against a lot of enemies, but at the very least, we've got to go to the Manufactoria and we've got to wake it. So it is kind of a special thing, and to do this, we have to generate power, and we only have 20 minutes to do it. And I don't mean like in the video. I mean we have 20 minutes of battle map to do. We're talking about, maps that take an hour to play through. Not this map.
Yeah, like this is what I need to see. Like even if you leave the map with a lot of like random enemies or whatever on there, like just have me solve the problem and then leave the rest of it to the auto resolve or what have you.
Yeah, so the idea of waking the Manufactoria, the reason why the enemy has 3 bases is specifically to harass us as we try to build power. It's technically not about fighting the good fight, it's about amassing the resources we need to succeed.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I don't remember this scenario.
There are a few scenarios that some people might forget about. There is actually one scenario in the entirety of this game where you don't have a base.
I've always appreciated those sorts of scenarios, honestly, because it's just like, all right, like I've got my resources, I need to steward my resources, and
there are always really fun ones in Warcraft 3. like ones.
Yeah,
and StarCraft.
Those were always the ones that I loved most. The StarCraft 1 and Brood War as well. I was
when you would go into like the facilities and you'd have a bunch of troops and be like, poking around. So many custom maps got made. It was just like going inside the facility and fighting the Zerg of eating everybody because they were fun.
Yeah,
they were legitimately fun missions that everyone enjoyed doing. They were like more narrative than battle oriented, but they were still really, really good fun. So we're going to be fighting a lot of Space Marines, but that's okay because we've got a lot of violence we can inflict.
Yep, like Necrons are a very good foil for the Space Marines in this game. They're both like ranged focused armies, but the Necron warrior is very good against heavy infantry, and the Space Marine tactical squad, surprisingly enough, is not actually that good against heavy infantry, because the base bolter doesn't have a great armor penetration. You need the plasma rifle to actually be good.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a lot of like skirmishes all over the map that I'm going to be like trying and failing to keep track of, but it's okay. It is worth noting, building stuff does take out, like, it does actually raise the amount of power you need to collect. It's not a number, a nebulous number that the game just ticks down. It's actually a hard-coded number tied to how much you've got on the top left-hand side of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you need to have it in reserve, it looks like.
So yeah, so I've actually, like, I think you start at like 2,500 power you need, and now I'm at 2,700 with 16 minutes to go. I think it's power regardless of which faction you are, which can be kind of like kinda on like factions that only need like that can like build up some good starting troops with requisition. But that in turn is also again why your enemy gets 3 bases for this mission, to make it very difficult for you to have to make that sort of a decision. But that's why we've got the power. Like, there's also like no small number of like power facilities that we can plop stuff on out there. So all we really need to do is just beat up all of the Space Marine forces on the planet, and then just build those super generators, and we'll probably be able to speed over the line. Because I don't think destroying everybody does it. I will see.
It did mention that you can just kill all of your
then.
enemies.
Well, that'll work
that
then.
Also does it.
I'm pretty good at that too. Hey, that was mine. Fuck you guys.
Excuse you?
Fuck you guys. Get away from my house. And they're just like, okay, we're leaving. Sorry.
Dude.
But I didn't even like notice at the time. I'm just like, fuck that.
Yeah,
I'll send them back and build more power generators.
The amusing thing for Necrons is that you end up needing to words hard. The amusing thing for Necrons is that you need to build a crapload of power anyway. So it's like okay, just play your normal game. If you end up winning, winning by destruction. You end up winning by destruction. Okay, cool.
And it is still a pretty cool map and a pretty cool scenario idea. Like, I give credit to them. They came up with some. They came up with some good ideas.
This is a good change of pace.
Yeah, like it's like and the mission for fucking like where you don't get an army. We'll see that. It's kind of harrowing, even as the Necrons. And like the Necrons have the capacity, like I give it the capacity to like stay in the fight a lot easier than every other faction.
Yeah, I imagine that one's pretty rough on like the Imperial Guard or some of the other armies that have a lot more.
Very spicy for the Tau. Let's just say.
Very spicy for the Tau. Orcs is probably also a pretty interesting situation.
Yeah. Because remember, repairing stuff requires resources.
It does. It most certainly does. Though, fortunately, most infantry self heal. Like they'll just sort of walk it off after a while. Which was always the problem. Like one of the implicit problems with the commando missions as Terrans on.
You needed a medic.
Yeah,
and the medics weren't a thing until Brutalist.
Yep. So like the base ones, like God help you if you got your hero screwed up early on, but like they just took a bunch of damage because like Raynor as a Marine, he just sort of be there, like screwing around, and it's like okay, you're like I have to keep you around because the objective is to bring you to everything, but you're now just sort of dead weight. Also, no, I'm not sorry about us talking about other games when the Eldar aren't on the screen. We will have more than enough time to talk about the Space Marines when we're properly fighting the Space Marines.
Yeah, the Space Marines have a long and storied history of fighting the Necrons, including my. You know what? I'm just gonna mention it. My favorite non-first founding chapter, the Executioners, one of the first Space Marine chapters to have fought against the Necrons. and that was they were led by one of the leading figures during the Badab rebellion, Tulsa Doom, who is still the best named character. Tulsa Doom, the High Executioner. Well, that's not the chapter master of the executioners. That's basically the head chaplain. And because, as I point out, the chaplains work differently in the executions than they do in most of the other ones. And he's basically the chief amongst them. And he's cool. He's pretty cool. And that's how he has a bionic arm because he got shot in the arm by Gauss fire, and it basically just flayed his entire hand down to the bone, and a little bit beyond that as well. So the Space Marines have been dealing with the shenanigans of the Necrons just as long as everybody else.
And like a lot of chapters like the Executioners that just have many more scars to show from it.
Yeah,
it's particularly interesting, I think, simply because the Space Marines have I'm hesitating because I'm trying to catalog it, but like there are a number of Space Marine chapters that are specialized in fighting Necrons, and I think like there's a disproportionate number of chapters that do that.
Industrial production special ability. When you fight on the battle map, you will start with additional power, allowing you to produce units and structures more quickly.
Yeah, which is like an absolute game changer for the Necrons. Well,
especially for the Necrons.
That's where it ends for now. I'm not entirely sure who we're going to be beating up next. We could still be going back and fighting the Orcs. We could be fighting the Eldar. We could be fighting the Blood Ravens. But we will be removing somebody from the pool soon enough. So yeah, that's for next time.
Got a hot hand.
Yeah, like who knows? It's been a year. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But we will find out next time. I've been the Last Robo-Kai.
And I have been Coolguy.
And we'll see you then as the Necrons continue their very slow purge across the surface of Cronus.